Good afternoon. Hello, this is Valerie Ray with Morick. Today we are going to actually be talking about actively engaging students in the classroom using a product called Nearpod. Again, I'm Valerie Ray, Morick Instructional Technology Specialist. I also have with me one of our Model Schools teammates. She's the chat monitor. This is Heather Schaefer, and she will be helping direct some of your questions that you may have in the chat box. A couple things before we get started. If you are joining us live right now, I would ask that you say hello in the chat box so that we know who is actively with us today. So go ahead and say hello, and Heather will be saying hello back. Anytime that you have a question, please be sure to put it into the chat box, and Heather will make sure that we can answer your question in a timely manner. Okay? All right. Let's get started. Actively engaging students in the classroom with Nearpod. All right. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually run this presentation in Nearpod. I'm just going to back up just a second because what I want you to do, we're going to do a couple housekeeping things first of all. I'm going to switch over to my incognito window because I want to show what you should have on your screen. I want you to see what this looks like. I'm going to ask that you open up 3 different tabs. Make sure you're in the Chrome browser, and we are going to actually toggle back and forth between these 3 tabs. The first tab is going to be actually the webinar that you see that you're connecting with us now. The next one is actually going to be your student view. So if you open up a tab, I'd like you to put in the URL nearpod.com/student/. And once you enter that into the URL, hit enter, you should have this on your screen. This is the join session web view of Nearpod. This is what you would have your students log into if you were running a Nearpod presentation. Okay, so you're going to have tab 1 is going to be the actual webinar. Tab 2 is going to be where the students log in, because you're going to log in here in a second. And then the third one is actually going to be just nearpod.com, where I would ask you if you already have a Nearpod license subscription or a free version. I would ask that you just log into your Nearpod account. We'll be working with that in a little bit. Okay, any questions so far? So 3 tabs at the top on your browser. You're going to have the webinars, tab 1. You're going to have Nearpod, a student login as tab 2. And tab 3 is going to be your actual Nearpod account. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch back to my view. I actually have a Nearpod set up for this particular webinar, and I'm going to launch it. I want to launch a new live. Okay. So what I'm going to ask you to do is go to your tab 2. This is where your students are going to log in. So what I want you to do is log in with this code, NHWPY. This is the code that goes along with the presentation that I created in Nearpod, also bringing in a Google slide deck, and then adding some interactives to it. So I want you to get a good feel of what your students are going to feel when you are actually doing a Nearpod presentation. I also want to be able to show you what the teacher view looks like, because it is just a little bit different. Okay, so first things first, before we really get going, Nearpod is an EdLaw 2D compliant software subscription that we are able to use here at the RIC and in New York State. And like I said, it is EdLaw 2D compliant. It is on that CLO list that the RIC publishes on the website. So some districts, a lot of districts are actually really looking at utilizing a piece of software like this, or a program like this, because it does fall under that EdLaw 2D. All right, so remember our code, NHWPY. Also take a look at this down here. This is from the teacher view. You are able to actually take this code and you can actually launch it either through an email, you can launch it through social, a social media link, you can have a live link, you can launch it through Google Classroom, and we'll actually talk about that in a little bit. You can actually launch it in Remind, and then Microsoft Teams. So as a teacher, I'm going to close this out. Now, you're going to be looking at, on tab 1 is going to be the teacher view, on tab 2 is going to be the student view. Okay? So, in your student view, you're basically going to see the actively engaging students in the classroom with Nearpod. All right, this is my title slide. Right? Now, as the teacher, I can advance your screens, and that's the beauty of using this in the classroom, because you don't have students who are actually working through or working ahead. They go at your pace. You set the pace for the presentation in the classroom. Now, one of the first things I've done here is actually put an interactive piece into this presentation, and it's called a collaborative board. I don't need to approve. So the collaborative board looks like this. This is a great way to brainstorm ideas, to actually get class or student opinions on specific things that you're working on. This one here basically is really a hello, it's a welcome board. So what I want you to do is I want you to take a minute to introduce yourself. If you are with us live, be sure to tell us tell us what district you're from, and also would like to know what level of Nearpod user you are. If you've never used Nearpod before, this is something totally new to you, or yes, you're aware of Nearpod, you just really haven't implemented it in the classroom, or you know what, I use it all the time. Okay, so take a few minutes down here. What you're going to do is down here at the very bottom in the little text area, it says share your thoughts and or images here. You can actually add an image if you want to, or just post, your name, who you are, and what district you're from. Once you write it in the little text box below, you can hit post, and it'll post to the corkboard just like that. Okay. I'll give you a minute or two. Hello, Kristen. Hello, Kelly. Very nice. Here's Heather. Here's our chat moderator. Very nice. Okay, so what I want you to do right at this point, I'm not going to, hello Bonnie, how are you? I'm not going to advance the slide yet. What I want you to do is I want you to switch back to tab 1, which is the webinar screen. So switch back to tab 1, and you're going to see my view as a teacher. There are a few things that I want to show you. So everybody switch back to tab 1, and you should see basically what you see on my screen right here. Okay? So what I want to do is I want to point out a few things from the teacher perspective when you're running a Nearpod presentation. You have up here in the upper left-hand corner, notice you have the code is always there. If you have students who are coming in late, you can always hit the little share. It'll give you the code right there. Close it out and it takes you back. But the code is always up here in the left-hand upper corner. Also, if you wanted to back out of the presentation, you can hit the left arrow. The left arrow will take you out of the presentation. It'll ask you, do you want to quit this live presentation view? And you say yes. The other thing too, up here in the middle, you have a down arrow next to Nearpod. This is an area where you can actually access reports, and we're going to talk about reports toward the end of the webinar. This is also an area where you can also end the session. But what's really interesting is that if you come over here to the actual right, you see there's a little button that says add an activity. if you click on that add activity, you're going to notice there are a few things that you can do on the fly, which is really great, because if you wanted to actually send students to a web link or a web address, you could actually do it here. If I clicked on this web link, all I would have to do is actually put in the URL, right? And then hit the share button, and it would go out to every single student in the presentation, which is really kind of a neat feature. Other activities that you can add on the fly, you can add an open-ended question. You can also do a draw it, and we'll talk about draw it's. You could do another slide, and then also a true-false question. So those are some things that you can do on the fly. Hello, Jack. I see that you have posted to our corkboard. Thank you. The other thing that is really interesting on the teacher side, over here, up here in the right-hand corner, notice it's a little S. That S stands for student view. So if I'm a teacher and I'm really walking through this and I want to see what this looks like, I want to see what my students look like, I can actually click on that S and it'll change me from teacher view to student view. Okay, so it takes a minute. But now I'm looking at the same things that you guys are looking at. All right, which also gives me the choice to toggle back to the teacher view as well. Okay. So that is a really nice added feature that Nearpod has actually put into Nearpod. Would you like to approve student comments before they are posted? Okay, so as I switch back to teacher view, I now get a little box that says, all right, you can moderate these comments to these corkboards if you want to, or you can just let students post. But it gives you the option to do that. And then once you select an option, you can say apply for the rest of the session. All right, so do I want to monitor this? No, I don't need to approve students in this capacity. If I was in the classroom, depending on your student, you guys know your students. So you would know whether you should monitor before anything is posted based on the makeup of your classroom, right? So I'm just going to click no here. And once I click no, it takes me back to my teacher view. Now, the other thing that I wanted to show you in the teacher view is down here on the lower left, notice, I think you can see this, right? You see the little green area with 5, the number 5 next to it? This is a listing of all the students who are in my live session or in the live Nearpod right now. So all of them are green. Everybody's right where they're supposed to be. Once in a while, you'll have a network issue. It might kick a student out. It would automatically turn red. And it would tell you the student's name and the student who actually has either closed out the presentation, left the presentation, opened up another tab, something along that line. And as a teacher, you're going to see that from your teacher view, and you're going to be able to address that quickly. So that feature I absolutely enjoy because it tells me basically, notice before I had clicked on that a couple times just to see who was in the presentation, and right now I know that I have 5 people here. The middle section on my screen, 3 out of 11, it basically, if you click on the arrow, it basically shows you all the slides that are in this presentation. Oops, I didn't want to do that. Let's go back. Takes me to another one. All right, let's get to the corkboard. Make sure this is the same one. No, it's a different one. All right, so what I'm doing is I'm actually in another session. Yeah, that's pretty easy to do. Just be careful with your arrows. Still live on my other session, the ones that you guys are in, but I'm not going to be able to advance it because I can't get back into that one. Okay, how do we want to do this? All right, what I'm going to have you guys do is just end your session. Go ahead and close it. I'm going to give you another code to get you caught up to the one that I'm in. Because right now I'm join another session, this one here, the LBEOF. Let me know if you have questions. We'll get back to where we need to be. Are we all good? Yeah. Let Heather know if you have questions. We're going back to tab 2. You're ending that session you were in, and we're joining this one here. LBEOF. So you might have to toggle back to the first tab to get the code, go back to your second tab to sign back in. Okay, we have 2 people in. Thank you, Jack. Thank you, Kelly. I apologize for being so confusing here, but we'll wait a few minutes. 3. Okay. Kristen, Kelly, Jack, Bonnie. Who was the other one? That's everyone. Okay. I'm excited that you guys were able to do that. Like I said, I apologize, but let me show you what I was trying to get at. If you switch back to tab 1, I want you to see the teacher view. So make sure you go back to tab 1. Okay, you're going to see that I'm sitting on the cork board. This is the new session, so that one's, it's not going to have everybody's previous cork board post-its, but that's okay because we'll be able to get that out of our report section, and I'll show you how to do that. But this is the important piece. Down here, like I said, there was, I've got 3 slides out of 11 in this presentation. If I click on that up arrow, and like I said, I'm in tab 1 and I'm on the teacher view, I can look through any of these slides and jump to a section, right? If I wanted to start over here or I wanted to come over here, all I would have to do is click on the slide itself and then click share, and it would jump everybody to that same section. All right? So I'm going to pick this one, even though this is the next slide. I'm just going to go ahead and hit share anyway. So now if you go back to tab 2, which is your student view, right? You're going to see today's questions and topics. So we're kind of backtracking just a little bit. So let's talk a little bit about Nearpod itself. What is Nearpod? It's an interactive presentation piece that you can use in the classroom, especially if you have students who have their own devices in a one-to-one environment. You could also use this in a station rotation kind of thing, set up some interactive pieces, whether they're exit tickets or, you know, they're sponge activities or just some skill and drill activities that you pull together, or use previous Nearpod presentations that are already created. You could set things up that way. What makes Nearpod interactive? The interactive piece really is about being able to collect student thoughts, to kind of determine what students are learning, where students are, what their thoughts are. Are they really getting the concepts that you're trying to teach, or are they really practicing what you've already taught? The other thing too, how do I find standard, well, here's a good one, standard related Nearpod presentations for my classroom. We're going to go over that. There is a new feature in Nearpod, which is great, Standards Align New York State. So you can find some interactive pieces that you can use in your classes, in your station rotations, or setting up in Google Classroom, which is really an interesting piece to this. How do I modify or create my own Nearpod lessons? We're also going to talk about that, because being able to pull in your own information, being able to pull in your own interactivities for your students is the power in this actual presentation software. How can I use Nearpod to inform my instruction? Reports. There is a great section to be able to pull off reports for each time you run a Nearpod presentation, and that really gives you, depending on the information that you've put in there, depending on the formative assessment piece that you've put into your Nearpod presentations, you're going to be able to pull off data from that particular session and those students, and you're going to be able to actually figure out where students are, what students need a little bit of, you know, extra help, what students are really excelling. Maybe you have, you think that your class might be in a spot where, maybe they need to review just a little bit more, and then all of a sudden you find out, no, wait a minute, they're right on target. Let's keep going. Okay, so being able to use some of the reports in Nearpod, there's a lot of power in that. The other piece also that I didn't show you down here, and we'll actually talk about that in a few minutes, there's hide students' names. So when you signed into Nearpod, you actually had to put your name in. And depending on how you instruct your students and what name you want your students to use, that's entirely up to you. If you are using a paid subscription, the Ed Law 2D policies or privacy policies are in place. So depending on how you want your students to actually be named here, you can actually show their names when you're sharing student work out, or you can actually take the names off. I find that it's probably best just to take the names off unless it's something that you really want to celebrate and you want to show students and, you know, give kudos to the student that actually got the question, you know, went above and beyond or something along that line. But I like to toggle this on and I like to toggle it off. So show students names. Okay, you know what, maybe I don't want to. All I have to do is hit it again and it says, now you're hiding student names. That was just one piece that I had forgotten to show you. All right, so we're going to actually go to the next slide. So this next slide contains a video. So if you switch back over to your student view, you're going to see that there's a video ready to play. As the teacher, I get to decide whether I want it just to play on one device, which might be the device that I'm projecting to the board, or I could display it on all devices within the classroom. If you decide to put video into your presentations or use video, you're going to want to make sure that students have headphones, because if you decide to let them play at all devices, they get to actually play the video at their own pace. They can stop, they can go back and look, but having their own headphones really helps in the classroom. Okay, I'm going to say this device only. So what I'm going to ask you to do, all right, tab 2. Can someone please tell me in the chat whether they see the video, tab 2, it's ready to play? I just want to double check and make sure. Actually, you know what? I could use my little student view. Okay. So as I switch just to make sure, okay, so this is what you guys see in your student view. Perfect. Now if I go ahead and I play this is about a 2-minute video. We're going to play it. And then we'll move on from there. Okay, so this is just a little intro on Nearpod and some of the VR pieces too.
Introducing Nearpod, an award-winning student engagement platform that comes with
Do I need to?
lessons. Nearpod is a platform that easily allows teachers to create, download, and teach interactive lessons across all student devices, including Chromebooks, iPads, iPhones, and Android devices. Teachers can easily upload their existing PowerPoints, PDFs, Google Slides, and Sways, and convert them into interactive Nearpod lessons by adding engaging activities like quizzes, polls, draw-its, open-ended questions, fill-in-the-blanks games, and 3D objects. With Nearpod VR, teachers can take their students on a virtual field trip anywhere in the world. Teachers launch a live lesson. Students enter a lesson code, and the lesson is synced to all student devices. Teachers can also launch student-paced lessons, which allow students to complete a lesson on their own time, wherever they are. Teachers get real-time feedback on student understanding and can access post-lesson reports to assess individual and class performance. Nearpod also has a library of thousands of ready-to-run, standards-aligned K-12 lessons across all subjects from a curated list of trusted publishers. All lessons are editable and customizable to meet the needs of individual teachers and students. Nearpod is the most comprehensive student engagement platform that your students will love.
Okay. All right, so that was a bit of a test for me as well. I think if you were on the teacher tab, you probably could see the video. If you were in the student one, you couldn't. All right, not quite sure why that is, because I only selected it to play on one device. So what you would have had to do is switch back to tab 1. Okay, my mistake, I'll remember that next time. If you were to use this in the classroom and you put video in, though, you would just let it go out to each device, like I had said before, and make sure students have their own headphones and they can each individually watch the video themselves. Okay. So we already talked about this. Let's get started. We have the first tab, second tab, third tab. I think you guys have already got that down. Switching back from tab 2 to tab 1. I think you guys have that. And then your tab 3. I'm just going to double check to see where I am here. All right. Let's see this right here. All right, so I think we're all set. What I want to do now is I'm actually going to exit this particular, no, I'm not going to exit out. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to open up my Nearpod library. All right, so I'm going to ask you guys to switch back to tab 1. And you're going to actually take a look. I'm going to explain the filing system with Nearpod, what you're really getting, what it really looks like. And then we're actually going to do an interactive VR one because there's a lot of power in VR, and I really want to show you what that looks like. At that point, we're also going to actually take some time to find some Nearpods that are going to pertain to what it is that you're doing, and then also I'm going to show you how you can modify, create your own. I want to take a few minutes to talk about that as well. But as we're looking at this library, now you need to understand that I have a district user account. Your level of access might be a little bit different than mine, okay? But the interface is basically the same. So let's go through the interface and some of the pieces that are here. Up in the upper left-hand corner main menu is that little home button. Every time you get to a point where you're not quite sure where you need to go to get back to something else, the home button is always a home button. So that's always, when you hit home, this is where you're going to come back to. Personalized offers, Nearpod, we don't have to click on that right now. What's really important over here, though, to the right-hand side is that little plus. That little plus, when you click on it, this is your create button. Here you can create lessons in Google Slides because Nearpod is now an add-on in Google Slides. We'll talk about that and we'll show you what that looks like as well. You can create a Nearpod lesson. You can create folders, and you're going to see that I have a folder structure already set up within my Nearpod account. And then also there's an area here that provides you for subplans, so that if you are out and you wanted a sub to run through or have students work through a particular Nearpod presentation, you could also set that up. All right, so let's take a look at the left-hand side. The left-hand menu, news and updates or district user. There's also an area here for a join code. All right, so if you were actually joining another Nearpod presentation, you could put your join code there. You're going to notice that there's a Nearpod lesson library. We'll click on that in a minute. But because I have a district user account, I also have a school library and a district library, which means that in a district account, if I really wanted to set up a folder for, or I wanted to make sure that all math teachers had access to a particular Nearpod presentation that I taught in 4th grade, and I have 3 other 4th grade teachers, I want to make sure that everybody has access to the same content. And then also you can do district library, which would be a library for K through 12 teachers. Okay? You have an area here for my library. That's the library for your individual account. And then also subplans if you want to do that. This section here, and I'm not quite sure with your level of access if you're really going to see this section, this really is just an area where you are able to purchase additional add-ons for your Nearpod subscription. Okay, English learners, learning labs, digital citizenship, career and exploration, historical perspectives and literacy, social emotional learning, and vocabulary video pack. Those are additional pieces to your subscription. Here's an area for your reports. So every time you run a Nearpod presentation, let's just say you teach the same presentation 4 different times in one day. Each session will log its own report for you to look at. Okay, that's really great. You have an area down here, teacher resources, FAQ, and then also what's new. I want to take a few minutes and I want to actually have you click on Nearpod lesson. Well, you're going to watch this basically. Nearpod lesson library. When I go into the library, I can actually search out for something very specific by typing something very specific up here. 4th grade division. All right, so something could pop up here. But what I like to do, and I find interesting, is that I can also search by standard. right? So if I wanted to go down to New York, I click on my down arrow, I select New York. I now can select subject. So let's just say I would like to actually take a look at, let's just do some ELA, okay? I can select a grade. I'm going to go, let's go 5th grade. All right. So as I start filtering, the Nearpod presentations that have filtered for ELA 5th grade will start populating, but I also can look at strands for standards. So if I know that I have a particular standard that I'm working on, my lessons that I've been working on this week, you know, really stem around any one of these standards, I could actually click on one, use and identify prepositional phrases. I'm just going to use this as an example. And right now I have just one Nearpod that really pops up. What are prepositions? So let's just say, if I wanted to take a look at this, if I hover over this presentation, if I go down to the left-hand side, there's a preview lesson. If I click on that, it'll bring it into a preview window. And I see a couple different things here. I see that this was created by a Britta Willis. Not really sure who that is and what she teaches. But I could look through the lesson that she's created. And this is Standard L5 or 5.1a, language skills. It's an exit ticket. I know that it is 2 out of 22 slides because that tells me up here. The other thing that I also can look at is over here in the right-hand column. This tells me the 2 different standards that really are attributed to this particular presentation. So if this was something that would fall into what I'm looking for, okay, I could keep looking at it. The other thing is related content. If I selected related content, I also would get additional lessons that are related to this particular Nearpod presentation. So as I scroll through, I can actually, here's a little, this exit ticket lesson. There's a little blurb about this particular lesson here that was created by this Britta, is that what her name was? Yep. Okay. So I could read through that. I could also scroll through to take a look at, okay, so what are some of the things that are, you know, particular about this lesson that I like? Here are some of the objectives. I can define prepositions. I can identify prepositions in a sentence. I can appropriately use prepositions when writing. Okay, so get started, and you can just kind of scroll through to take a look at what this is about. Let's review key information. Okay, so there seems to be some really good things in here that I might want to keep. So maybe I don't look at everything, but excuse me, I can come down here to where it says add to my library. If I go ahead and I click it, it says show in my library. It turns green. So it went from a blue button, add to my library, to show in my library. That means, all right, so now I have access to this particular Nearpod presentation. If I click on show in my library, it didn't take me back. My library. All right, so I go to my home. What are prepositions? There it is. It's the first one right here. If you take a look at it, what are prepositions? Now when I mouse over this, okay, I have 3 dots up here in the upper right-hand corner. That basically tells me there are certain things that I can do with this. If this is a presentation that I really want to change, or I want to use, but I want to make some changes to it, then I would actually duplicate it, and then from the duplicated one, add in additional information, take out information. That is your copy to modify, okay? If I wanted to add this to a specific school library or a particular folder, I could do that. I could export it as a PDF. I could take a look at reports if I've run this session already, or I could just go ahead and delete it. Okay, so just remember, 3 dots, that always means that there's a menu of some sort. Always click on it just to see what the menu tells you. Notice over here I have a drag. I have the crosshairs, the double crosshair. And if I wanted to drag this to any one of my folders up here because, you know, it's something that I want to use, I'm going to put it into my actively engaging. So all I have to do is just drag it up and drop it. And so now it's in my actively engaging folder. All right, which means I need to go into my actively engaging folder. Well, here it is. So if I really wanted to get technical, oops, I want to drag this into Oh, it won't let me. I want to drag this. Okay. Why won't it let me drag? All right, there might be a little bit of a lag, but you could drag this into your ELA folder, an elementary folder, maybe a 5th grade folder. You can actually move these around. Also, when you mouse over, take a look. You have a live session or a live lesson, and then you also have a student paste option. Okay, you have a preview option in the lower right-hand corner, and then you also have an edit option. I'm going to show you this edit option real quick. If I click on edit, it gives me a little box that says you are about to edit a downloaded lesson. To keep a copy of the original, duplicate the lesson before you edit. Okay, so you have to make a copy of the lesson if you decide that you're going to take slides out, add slides in, do any kind of editing to somebody else's presentation. So I'm going to duplicate it. All right, so this is what it looks like when you go to edit any of these presentations. All right, you're going to take a look up here. You have a size 1.4 megabyte. All right, size actually becomes an issue depending on what your subscription level is. So the lowest subscription level, either the free or the gold, which the free is the silver, the gold is your next level up. We'll have to look that up because I know that your size limit within your library is much smaller as opposed to whether you have a platinum or a district level subscription. Okay, so this one actually is 1.4 megabyte. It's not bad. You have to remember if you're adding video, if you're adding all the interactives, that's going to increase the size of your presentation. Okay, so you have your slides all in order, 1, 2, 3, 4, and it goes all the way down to 23. I can rearrange these any way that I want. So if I want to move these slides around, I can. I'm going to just put that one right back where it was. If I want to add a slide, and so this is what I would do. If I wanted to add something, I would just click add. All right, I can add any kind of content. Maybe I want to change the first slide. I can add web content and then also an activity, but I want to take a look at add content. If I add content and it gives me all of these different options down below. I could do a video, I could do a slideshow, I could do, there's a graphing calculator, there's a field trip. We'll talk about field trips in a minute. Anything with vocabulary video. I always go to the first one, this slide. So remember, this is your intro slide, right? And it gives you some options over here to the right-hand side. So if I wanted to actually create a different slide or a different look to the slide, all I would do is select one and then just start adding a title. What was it? I'm just going to put slide title example. Okay, so you're just typing that in. You can also delete that if you need to. And what's really kind of neat about this too is that you have this area here where you can either upload a file or you can actually add some text, add some video, images, any kind of GIF. If I went to images, it allows me to actually search Google Images under Safe Search. I can also upload something from my computer, something from my Google Drive, Dropbox, Microsoft Teams, OneDrive. So I can actually add those things. And then if I know that, I have a PDF that I want to add in there and I want to drag and drop, I can do that in here as well. And once you make changes, then you just select save. I'm going to see if I can come up with a reading image of some sort. All right, I like that one. Select it. I'm going to click save. And now we have an image in the actual slide. The other thing you can do is you can actually resize the picture too. So I like that option. So we can resize that picture there. And I click save. The new theme is selected. Will also modify other slides. Yeah, let's go ahead and do it. Okay, so because I added that slide, it's going to show up down here on the bottom. You have to scroll down to the bottom of the tiles, and here's your slide. This is the one, remember, I wanted to create a different intro slide. So now all I have to do is actually just take this slide and drag it up and put it right there. Okay, so what are prepositions? So maybe I want to go back in and I want to edit that. I can actually select that slide. What are prepositions? Okay, make a save. So editing, modifying, deconstructing something that's already created in Nearpod is pretty easy. You just have to remember one important thing. You have to make, if you find a slide or a presentation that you want to use, you want to make sure that you duplicate it, right? Once you duplicate it, that's your copy. You can do whatever it is you want with your copy, okay? And it'll stay in your library. So the only thing you have to remember is that your save, your share, your preview, your options are down here in the bottom of the screen. Just to make sure that those changes stay, you make sure that you click on Save and Exit. What that does is it takes you right back to your library, and now the beginning piece of that presentation that I modified is right there. You know what? And I should be able to drag that, and I can now. No, why won't it let me? Usually just take it and drop it. Yep, it did. There you go. So now when I go into that folder, that's in there. Okay? Any questions so far? Anything anyone want to know? Anything about creating, about editing, searching? All right. I want to go back to my actively engaging folder. Did you notice the cookie crumb trail that's up here? All right. We're going to do something a little more interactive. What I want to do, so I want to make sure that we go into, I'm going to go into my VR and my writing. I have actually 2 Nearpods that I absolutely love. One is storytelling with animals. So I'm going to launch this. So if you want to watch how I would launch this, you're going to watch this on tab 1, and then you're going to switch over to tab 2, and you're going to put this code in. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I want to launch this live session. So I mouse over, live session. Yep, I want to launch it new because I've actually run it before. All right, so now I have this new code, FEUMR. Go over to tab 2. In tab 2, type in this code, and it'll take us into, it's basically, this is a VR, it's virtual reality. So there's some 3D pieces to this presentation, which is really interesting to run with your classes on these kind of things because they're just odd at what you can do with them. All right, so do we have the code FEUMR? All right, so I have one person. Now I'm going to sit and I'm going to wait till everyone gets into the presentation. Okay, we're up to 6. All right, so exploring storytelling with animals. All right, so now I'm going to advance you to the next slide. So this is a teacher guide. Not that you guys need to see this, but this might be one of those pieces that you might want to take out of the presentation if you want to use this. Okay, so again, to edit a presentation, to modify what slides are in it, what information is in the presentation, you have to duplicate it first. I didn't do that with this one. Okay, so here's the storytelling. It actually, as a teacher, I would probably want to go through and take a look at some of the pieces that go along with this. This is a Google Docs, so you can actually save it to your drive, right? Make a copy of it, save it to your drive, and have this available to you. Okay, so guiding question. How do story elements like context, dialogue, and sensory detail enhance a story? All right, so that's the question. That's a guiding question. Here are the objectives. By the end of this lesson, you will be able to describe characteristics of a good story, such as context, dialogue, and sensory detail, and apply these characteristics in making stories of your own. Okay, so let's get started. There are 24, just so you know, there are 24 slides in this one. We're not going to spend all 24, but I want you to see the interactive pieces that go along with this. All right, so here's first interactive piece. It's a think, pair, share. What's the difference between a good story and a bad story? So first thing you would do as a teacher, tell your students we're going to think, pair, share. What do you think? Talk it over with your partner. What do you think the difference is between a good story and a bad story? Okay. So now we're going to explore. So you would take a few minutes to do that with your students, and now we're going to explore. So get ready to explore. I like how some of these presentations actually say we're going to be doing something. Let's get ready. Okay, on the next slide, you'll see 4 images representing key components of good stories. Try to guess what they are. All right, so this particular portion of this presentation allows each student to actually click through the 8 different pieces to this actual slide. So the first one, right, what is this? It tells you that this is about the setting. If you click on the third one, what are those? I'm pretty sure those are characters. And if you keep going, number 5, you've got people who are engaged in a dialogue, right? And then the last one, okay, that's sensory, that's setting, sensation, sensory detail. Okay, so those are things that you can put together. You can change those if you decide to edit this presentation to something that might be more usable for yourself, or just keep the ones that are there. All right, I thought this one was pretty good. I'm not really quite sure if there's much that you really want to change on this one. So when I click the next one, let's read. Okay, so now this is telling the class, all right, the tortoise and the hare. On the following slide, you'll read one of Aesop's fables. All right, so you don't need me to read that to you. So this is interesting. This is called a draw it. So on this particular slide, you now have the PDF, right? Or you have the Aesop fable that's right there. You would have your students read through. But the question is, read the story below and highlight the part that establishes context for the reader in red. Then highlight dialogue in blue and any sensory detail in green. So when you're looking at the bottom of your screen, you're going to see the tools that you're able to use. I'm switching to student view. So your tools down at the bottom. You have a pen, you have a highlighter tool, a text tool, an image tool, and an eraser tool. Okay? So if you click on the highlighter, it tells you the colors to use and then the thickness of the highlight. So go ahead, take a minute or two, and I want you to actually go through and do this one. Highlight the parts that establishes context for the reader in red. And then highlight dialogue in blue and sensory details in green. Left. Even if you just do the first section, highlight context in red, and then I want you to switch back. Once you do that and you submit, switch back to the teacher tab, tab 1, because you need to see what the teacher sees. Okay. Yeah, go ahead and just, whatever you have done, just click submit. And then switch back to tab 1, because I want you to see what I see. There we go. Okay, so if you are back on tab 1, you're going to see that I have every single one of the student draw-its. All right? Students aren't seeing this, but I'm seeing this from a teacher's perspective. And if I really wanted to say, you know what, Jack nailed it. So I'm going to actually select Jack's, and I'm going to click share. Go back to your student tab, and what do you see? Do you see Jack's example? Okay. Notice up at the top where it says Jack C. Remember where I said on the teacher's perspective, I can actually hide. I can hide names or I could show names. This might be an example where I might want to hide names. Okay? Just depends. I mean, you know your class. It's up to your class. Okay? So now I can pick out, use teachable moments, pick out examples to show to the class, to talk to the class about, you know, this student did really well on highlighting in red. All right? I'm going to now, from the teacher perspective, unshare. And close out. And if you go back to tab 1, you're going to see that I'm back to my Draw It tablet, tablet view. Okay? So now I want to go on to the next one. Any questions on that? Did everybody catch that? Play around with that feature. That's quite a powerful feature if you think about it. Okay? So back on your student tab, I'm going to go to the next one. Okay? So the next one actually, the next slide just basically says, how does your answers compare? All right? So because we're running out of time, let's go on our virtual tour. All right, so virtual tour, everybody ready? Now I have to tell you that it doesn't matter whether you have VR goggles or not, okay? And it depends on what device that you're using and what device your kids are on. If they're on a Chromebook or a desktop or a Chromebook or a laptop with a trackpad, they're going to have to learn to move around with their two fingers, the left and the right hand. But kids know how to do that, or they can do it with a mouse. So, virtual tour. Okay, it says put on your critical lens. Sometimes writers need inspiration in order to start writing their stories. I'm going to stop there. Let's go to the next one. This I absolutely love. This gives you two different places to look. So, I'm going to, I think you are able to click on whatever one, right? So, if you go ahead and click on one, I don't care which one. I'm going to switch to student view. And where does it take you? Okay, right. It takes you straight into a 360 picture. And here, students can actually move around in the picture, up, down, move around, take a look at what's in the picture. And the whole point of this interactive piece is that we want to spark some writing, right? So I'm looking at the starfish, the tortoise, there's a swimmer in the background, Sandy and the light coming through. There's lots of different things going on here, right? How do you get out of there? I want to go back to the teacher. Okay.
I saw a link that said back to.
There's a link?
World map.
Okay, so yes, that's in the upper left, right? Link back to world map. So there are a couple different places that you can actually go to. One is there's a swarm of bees, which really is 3D. If you had 3D goggles, you would see that that one's 3D. There's some other ones too. So the link down at the bottom, do you see where it says Storytelling with Animals VR Tour? Do you see that on your map at all? Okay, so if I click this, does that change for you? It didn't change. Yeah, it did. It gave you a bigger one because you can actually move around this map. Try moving around the map. There are other places that you can go. So an option for a dog story. I clicked on that one and I thought I was going to get a little dizzy just because there's so much going on in the dog story one. Sensory, right? Okay. All right. So again, that's an example of some of the VR pieces to this. I'm going to actually jump to Let's Reflect slide. So if you're looking already, if you're looking, I'm going to change the screen. We're going to Let's Reflect because we're running out of time. And I want you to actually How do the story elements like context, dialogue, and sensory detail enhance a story? If you want to switch back over to tab 1 to take a look at the teacher view, my teacher view basically tells me when students have answered and will tell me what their answers are. Okay, it'll also tell me participation percent. So how many of my students within my class have actually participated? At this point, only 17%, but that's okay. All right, so these are some valuable tools for you as a teacher to help monitor what your kids are actually doing with this particular presentation. Okay, again, if I have someone that I want to share out their answers to, all I have to do is select share, and that share now goes back to everybody's, it goes to everybody's screen. I can unshare, use another student example if I want to. Okay. So here's another interactive piece. All right, I'm going to actually stop here because I want to go back to the presentation. Oh, I don't know. You guys are probably out of it, right? Ooh. Yeah. All right, so instead of getting you back into another presentation, if you would just list in the chat, tell me if this is something that you find would be valuable for you to use in your class with your students. Would you find your class, or would your students find this meaningful? Would they find it purposeful? Well, maybe not so purposeful, right? Because every instructional tech that we use, we want to make sure it's meaningful and purposeful. But is this something that you would absolutely like to explore a little bit more, something you would use in your class, something that maybe you want to take some more time, really dive into some of the features that are offered? I'm going to end this session. Okay. So while you're doing that, the other thing that I need you to do is go back to tab 1, and I just want to show you quickly what a report looks like. Just quick. So I clicked on reports in my main menu area there, and I can select which Nearpod presentation I want to look at. I have one with 6 students. That's the first time I ran this. If I click on it, I can actually download it as a PDF or a CSV file, but I can actually scroll through to look at participation, right, of my students, and I can actually get some meaningful data from this. If I find that students aren't really grasping what it is that I'm talking about, this is where I would go back in and I would either reteach, differentiate, find another way, maybe ask them, clarify, just so that I get a good handle on what my students are actually getting out of this particular Nearpod. Okay. All right. Any questions, any last minute questions for Heather, myself, in the chat area? Also, I just want to make sure that I thank you for participating, and I feel like that was really a quick overview of the power of Nearpod in the classroom. If you have any additional questions, be sure to reach out. If you have an FTE in your building from model schools, be sure to reach out. That FTE can help you as well. Any other questions?
Are you familiar with Pear Deck and how does it compare? It seems to be very similar.
Yes, very similar. I am a Nearpod through and through. I actually been training on Nearpod for almost 4 or 5 years. Pear Deck is okay. I find that there's more useful information, more things that are already curated, things that are already done for you in Nearpod that you can actually download, make a copy of. It's pretty easy to deconstruct, pretty easy to edit, and I have a full presentation that I can run with my class. I absolutely love the diagnostics at the end. I love the reports at the end. I think they're more meaningful. Even though I am a Google trainer, and yes, Pear Deck is, part of that. I just really have found that Nearpod is valuable, a little more valuable. Could be preference. Okay. Thank you for joining me and Heather. And like I said, if you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out. My email is vray@moric.org. And hopefully I'll see you the next time we do another session of actively engaging students in the classroom. Have a good afternoon. They would have to search that. I think there are, but they would have to search that.
Yeah, he said a quick search revealed that they cost money, so he's looking for.
Depending on what depending on his level of subscription.